Three men looked out over the bay, mounted atop strong horses as they navigated the trees in hunt for game to bring home and feed their families with. The sounds of birds and the small critters that called the forest home filled the air, the sounds of larger animals being hunted down and killed. One large hare led them on a chase, moving through trees and bushes like the wind, the horses galloping after with them, breaking through smaller saplings and forcing their way past thorny bushes, heading to the coastline, ultimately crashing through the tree line and onto the loose sands that bordered the gray ocean. Now, having cornered the hare, one of the men jumped down and snapped its neck, hanging the body to his saddle. His back turned to the waves. He only saw his companions look out with dazed looks on their faces. Turning around again, he saw a fleet unlike any other. Several vessels, with a handful being well over 300 feet, with many rigid sails reaching into the sky from their decks. Around them were many other ships, nowhere near the size as the others, but still easily dwarfing anything outside of a royal galley. They stood on the beach for a few more minutes, watching the fleet make their way silently across the coast, electing to mount their steeds. One man would return to his home with the news, and the other two would shadow the ships to see where they ended up. A few hours would pass, with the morning dew evaporating into an overcast sky, not too uncommon for this area of the world, with the fleet still within eye line, but it unclear where their end target was. Eventually, a small garrison of cavalry showed up, most likely from a local lord who most likely didn't understand the potential size of any army on those ships. Another hour went by and the two hunters broke into their supplies, eating a few rolls of bread and butter as they now watched the largest of the ships turn into the Bay of Lemqin. Small brown men in robes and trousers could be seen scuttling around the decks, boarding small ships and moving to the shore where they cut down trees and started work on a simple jetty on the peninsula in the center of the bay. A few other ships continued south to an unknown destination, but most of them dropped their anchors in the shallow waters. Messages were sent to other local lords, unsure as to what they needed to do, not knowing if those who had just arrived were friend of foe or where they came from or why that had done. Pt.1 looked to the strange shore in front of him, a series of tall, spindly trees reaching into the air like the spines on a hedgehog, dreary gray clouds hanging over them, and, on the land, a small force of horsemen followed the fleet as it sailed. Pt.1 had under his command 16 of the largest ships Fengdao had ever built, each able to comfortably hold 9,000 molemen with cargo space large enough to feed them for many months, more than long enough for the voyage plus however long it would take to set up rice farms. Around 50 smaller ships were also present, putting the manpower of the fleet just over 60,000, with future ships being expected to follow on further voyages. The smaller ships held in their cargo holds vast amounts of seeds, livestock, engineering blueprints, and tools to allow for the quick construction of homes and farms once they made it ashore. Military engineers had also been brought along. With the hostility of the local tribes being unknowable, it had been decided by the Changdi that the fleet prepare for war and not face it rather than the opposite. The ships would sail into a large bay, with lookouts keeping an eye on the horsemen on the tree line as the first moles landed on the shore to begin felling the trees that covered the land. The deforesting would go on for a few more days before construction would finally start on rice paddies and a grand pagoda on a large peninsula that reached into the center of the day. Small jetties would pop up along the seafront for larger vessels to moor against, with the largest still at anchor in the middle of the calm waters, unable to get closer to the shore. A few small contacts would be made with local human tribes, claiming to be from places called Zarni, Predestad, Fingerland, and Sinelli, but nothing official, as they were merely local merchants seeking to peddle their wares of furs and meats. With an increasing amount of these merchants and no contact from the local lords who claimed to rule the land, messengers would be sent to them, inviting them to a grand feast to be held in the new city of Lemqin, with the lords of Sinelli and Fingerland both accepting, and Zarni and Predestad's lords not going in person but sending representatives.